start recording here. Alright, so today we'll spend a little bit of time in Windows, but I'm not using Windows itself because I do not have the ability to do screen recording in Windows itself. You know, the software that I need, to do that is not installed. So what I'll do is I'm going to run Windows in a virtual machine, and we'll go through the virtual machine to configure exactly the same thing that we did last time. So this way we know how to do it in Windows, and you guys can go home and do all of this stuff as well. This is just my defragmenter running, and I can probably just stop it too. Let's see.
No.
Nope.
No, QEMU.
There we go.
I said without QEMU.
Yep. QEMU, by the way, is also the engine behind the Android virtual device emulator. So it's a pretty commonly used emulator engine. But in this case, I'm emulating another PC that is running Windows. So there we go. It's a little bit slower because I could not get the accelerator to work either. So I'm gonna. But it will still be fast enough because these PCs are actually pretty fast to begin with.
I always wondered, would it be possible to run an emulator within an emulator?
Yes, I tried that already. There's actually an option. You can turn off that option so that you would not be able to run a virtual machine inside a virtual machine. But as it is right now, yes, you can run a virtual machine inside a virtual machine. It's kind of like in Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's a holodeck within a holodeck story.
I've never seen that one.
You haven't seen that one?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, that's a good one. Have you seen the one where they have Professor Moriarty created on the holodeck as Data's adversary?
Yeah.
So there's a sequel to that one where where Moriarty, the character, was because his objective was to defeat Data, right? So he came up with all these schemes, these different ideas to defeat Data, and one idea that he had was to create a holodeck within a holodeck. So when they quote-unquote exited the holodeck door, they were entering another holodeck that they thought was reality, that was under the control of Moriarty.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a really good episode. I like that one a lot. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go through the same process that we did last time, and this time it's all being recorded. Yeah, it's complaining, and it's really slow too because I couldn't get the accelerator to work today. And it wants to locate new hard drive, all that stuff. Okay. Well, while Windows is doing this, we can actually go ahead and talk about the scheduling for this class and also for your project. Depending on how ambitious your project is, now is a good time to actually start to do some planning. This is week 9, and this is a 16-week class, so we have approximately 7 weeks left. I would definitely get started right away. In other words, I would actually start to at least do some coding, and also do some diagrams at this point to document your project. So let's. It's starting up, but it's extremely slow. Maybe I should try to get KVM to work.
Question.
Yep.
Do we have to do the omelet style diagrams?
Not anymore. Okay, so at this point it's going to be just doing your application.
I mean, do we have to hand the diagrams in?
Well, you did that already. There was one homework assignment that has an omelet diagram in it already. So at this point, I think we should just focus on getting the app done. So what you want to do? Oh, I thought you had a hand. You were just handling your cables and stuff. Okay. Okay, so right now, let me check one thing because it just would not work before. Because if KVM is not working, it's really slow. You don't like
I
KVM?
haven't had good experience. I just went back to VirtualBox. It's easier.
And well, this one doesn't have any accelerator right now, so I'm gonna change it, restart it with an attempt to get KVM to work, because this is not doable.
Bring up just one web page, take like a couple minutes.
Yeah, that's not doable. And the interesting part is it has nothing to do with running this out of my. Okay, with KVM, I can actually resize it, so I can look at the other parts. Okay, it's gonna take a while to shut it down too, but it's okay. We can do that. Come on. That is really slow. Don't send. All right. So let me log into Moodle first, and then we'll talk about the scheduling of your project. 7 weeks is a lot of time, but that's also the problem, because a lot of times, when you have too much time, when some people have too much time, they tend not to get started early enough, and ended up, not being able to finish a project, even though there should be enough time to do it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to just kind of go through a very quick review of everything that we have talked about in this class, and how I think you guys should get started. It doesn't hurt to go to new blocks.app inventor, and I'm going to start with drtechapps.gmail. Are there any questions about how to get started with App Inventor 2 instead of App Inventor 1? I know some people wanted to stay with App Inventor 1 for specific reasons, like your browser would not work with App Inventor 2. But are there any other reasons why you guys may not want to work with App Inventor 2?
Because you can't pass back.
Okay, right. The screen close event is being handled correctly in version 1, but not in version 2. But not all apps require that particular capability. There are other ways to pass information back through TinyDB. It's just more cumbersome going through.
It doesn't work. I tried.
Oh, because the event doesn't get triggered at the right time, so that's why you're getting it at the wrong time.
Exactly.
Yeah. There are still ways to work around that one. You can kind of hack your way around it.
I did, but I don't like.
Yeah, I
It's like
understand.
you create a new object.
Right, you have to create a new object, or you create a new entry in TinyDB. So when you're in the other screen, it set it to a 1, and when that screen is about to exit, it will reset it back to 0. And then in your main screen, you will need a clock to check it periodically. Yep, it can get very cumbersome. Yep, absolutely. And I have not heard anything back from App Inventor or MIT, the Media Lab. So I'm not really quite sure whether it is actively being worked on or not. So that's basically that's a good reason to kind of stay with version 1. But version 2 has got local variables. If you define a lot of subroutines or procedures, version 2 is much better from that perspective. And let's see if my virtual machine. Okay, let's turn off. Okay, so how do you get started with your app? How many people have not gotten started with your project yet? So everyone has gotten started already?
No, I haven't started.
You have not started. Okay, very good.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you get to App Inventor 2 then? AI2 App Inventor MIT.
This is the URL. I've been using it for the past few classes. It's newblocks.appinventor.mit.edu.
I usually just Google MIT AI2.
Yeah, AI2.appinventor.mit.edu. Is that the same thing?
Well, this is the way I start, so I'm not sure about the other way, so I can only speak to this one. So how do you get started when you are working on a project? So, okay, let me start with a new example. I'm pretty sure I talked about this in this class already about a biodiesel dispenser, application. How do I get started? Something that we talked about already.
Well, I know what the user wants to do with it.
We want to know, why someone wants to download and use that application. We always start with that, not screen design and all kinds of stuff like that. We always look at it from the end user's perspective and see why they want to even install the application. So let me go ahead and do that first here. Okay. I'm gonna go to Gmail just so that I can get to my Google Documents, because that's another way to do the documentation. Okay. They changed the interface a little bit, so Google Drive is now over there instead of here. Another way you can also do this is to document the entire thing with a website. In other words, instead of using Google Documents, which is kind of nice in a way, you can also go to even more from Google and go to Sites and create basically a website for for yourself. You can do this already with apps.losreals.edu. Okay, your student account allows you to create your websites. The nice thing about a website is you have the full capability of a website. In other words, you'll be ready to push it out anytime you want to. And I think a website is also a good thing to do if you want to put it on your resume. Okay, so you can basically describe the entire process of how you create a particular project from start to finish. And if you want to interview for a job, you can actually put it on your resume and say, well, this is an URL to my project documentation. And I think it's going to be helpful, especially if you can include omelet diagrams, UML diagrams, and stuff like that. It's going to be quite helpful to convince an employer that you know what you're doing, or at least a good portion of what you need to do.
Question.
Yes.
What do you mean your student account allows you to do this? Why can't any citizen use this?
Huh? Your student
You said
account.
Your student account allows you to do this. Why do you need your student account?
Well, so that you don't have to sign up for a new Gmail account. In case you do not have a Gmail account, you can use your student account to do this. In other words, you can go to apps.losreals.edu, sign in as a student. Now, I am not a student, but I can still sign in and get to at least that part. And once you get here, they changed the interface a little bit here. You can go to Google Sites directly. Go. And now I can create my website here. There's no limitation that I know of how many websites you can actually create under your account in apps.losreals.edu. In other words, I can create another one right now. So I can just click create and go through this process. Really simple. You can change a lot. You can reconfigure a lot of stuff about your website later on and use it as a documentation process. All right. Okay, so I'm not going to use this account. I'm going to continue to use my other account. And since I already have Dr. Tech Apps as a website created already, I can continue to use that one. In other words, I can have a project subsite for each project if I want to, or I can create a new one if I just want to use it for demonstration purposes. Yep.
Does the site name have to be unique?
The site name does not have to be, well, it has to be unique amongst your sites.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be unique, across all the different, accounts. Because when you look at the URL to this site, it actually has your, account name in it first.
Oh, it is?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on whatever your Gmail address is, that's the URL.
No, it does not actually. Because this is actually the site itself. It's not my account, so it has to be unique across all of the accounts. It's kind of weird. Let's create another one and make this one kind of non-unique. Yes.
Temp.
Huh?
Temp.
Temp. That's a good one. Okay. So we'll say Okay, sorry, your site name must be between 6 and 30 characters long. Temporary. Temporary. If I spell it right, it is very unlikely that it is used. If I spell it incorrectly, it is very likely that it's already used. The location is not available, so it is across all the users. So you have to make something that is unique, something that will make it stand out, so that it's easy for people to kind of remember, and also for you to remember too. You can also always use a prefix, like a part of your name or something like that as a prefix for all of your sites. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to create not a new site. Well, maybe I should create a new site. I'll go ahead and create a new site just so that we can go through the entire process. So this is for my biodiesel dispenser application project. So I'm going to create a new site for that, and I can name my site as SAC biodiesel co-op. Okay, it's kind of long, but for the most part, I can just give somebody the URL, so they don't really have to remember the entire thing. And you have the option to select a particular theme. Now the theme is kind of a nice feature. You don't have to do it. Okay, you can always change the theme later on. So if you just want to get the site up and running and not spend too much time on the theme, you don't have to do a single thing about selecting a theme. You can just leave it as the default. And all of the options here, most of the options can also be changed later on, so you don't have to worry about all this stuff here. The only thing is, if your site has mature content only suitable for adults, you might want to check that option from the get-go, just so that you don't get into problem with other with kids going to your website. All right, so I'm gonna say COCCRISM and have the site created. Okay, so now I have a website created. By default, it is empty, using a very simple style, but that's okay for now because I just want to use it for documentation purposes for the time being. If you want to create new pages, you click that little icon on the upper right hand corner that says new page. If you want to modify the home page, you can click this button here that says edit page. Okay, so I will go ahead and click this button here, and once you click that button, you can see that it's kind of like the word processor in Google Drive. It gives you about the same options. It's not exactly the same, but about the same options as in Google Drive, the word processor in Google Drive. Some of the features that is really handy in the word processor in Google Drive is missing here. The one that I'm missing the most is being able to copy and paste images. In other words, I can take a screenshot, select a portion and put it into my clipboard and paste it here using Control V. That feature is entirely missing here. I actually have to upload a file in order to put in images here. Okay, so as a home page here, I'm just going to say, yep.
Would it be capable of drag and dropping an image into it?
I haven't tried yet.
To do that.
You might be able to do that, but right now I'm going to say, this is the home page of the Sacramento, okay, typo, Sacramento biodiesel co-op app. Okay, well, just have some documentation here would be nice, but I would not put too much stuff on this page. Unlike the word processor in Google Drive, this one doesn't actually save the document or publish the document as it is automatically. Whereas in Google Drive, whenever you type, within a couple of seconds, that becomes the document available to everybody else that you're sharing your document with. In this case, it is saving a draft. You can see, at the upper right-hand corner, it says right here, draft saved at a particular time, but it's not published. Okay, so other people cannot see the changes that I have made here until such time that I click the save button. Then, if I make this, if I make this site public then everybody else can see, the new content of this particular page. Are we still doing okay so far with this? Okay. If you want to create a new page, you click New Page, which is pretty simple. Okay. But in here, there are several kind of really important options. The first one is just name your page. Okay, it has to be, a name cannot contain spaces and punctuations and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and create a page, and perhaps I want to have planning as one page first. Okay, before I even talk about the details of the project itself. And here is the option that is important. Select the template to use. You can say it is a web page, which is normally what you want to do if it's documentation. An announcement is useful if you want to update it, or it has new content all the time. File cabinet allows people to download or access files on your website easily. And a list is probably about the same as a file cabinet. I have not used a list before. But web page is what I want here because it is going to be just a web page. And the most important part is to put the page under home in this case, so it is not at the root of your site. Instead, it is a sub page of the home page in this case. And I'll explain why that is actually important in this case. When this is all done, you click Create, and now we have a new page up, like that. Now, at this point, I can make changes to planning. Okay, so we can say, planning documents. So instead of just planning, I can now make the name a little bit more appropriate. In the case of writing an application, the planning part, needs to consist of, the things that we have already talked about. The most important part is, why would someone want to download your app? Because that will keep you. It will serve as a reminder to yourself, the developer, of why you're writing this app. I'm not sure about you guys, but for me as a developer, a lot of times I'll get into the details and the technical part of an application to the point that I would sometimes forget, what the application is really for, because I'll just be, making things more fancy and stuff like that, and then I forget, oh, okay, it's intended for people to do blah blah blah. Okay, so right here, you can use, any type of formatting. You can select the font, but I personally would also use, the headings to help, chop the document up into multiple portions. This part is not related to application or mobile apps, but if you use the right headings like H2, H3, H4, and so on, it makes accessibility software easier to work on this particular page, because all the accessibility screen readers will pick up the header or the heading tags, or heading elements, I should say, the heading elements, and break a document down to smaller chunks. And people who have people who are blind with a screen reader, they can get to a section a lot faster, if you use sections appropriately. So what I'll do is, I'm going to put an H2 here, and basically start with why would someone download and install this app? Okay, which is capturing what a use case diagram is really for, but except in this case it's in a written form, and many of you have done this part already twice, right? Because you turn in your UML diagram the first time, and then the previous homework assignment I also want you to restate why would somebody want to download and install your app. Okay, so right here, I'm just going to write down here and say to conveniently pay for and check prepaid biodiesel account information. Okay, that's just one of the use cases, because this app actually has multiple actors. So to the end user, this is one of the reasons. Okay, so So now I can use H3, a subheading to say to consumers, and then the other one is basically to service providers, people who are actually hosting the tanks and people who are managing the co-op. To service providers in H3, to conveniently manage biodiesel reorder tank monitoring and so on. I'm not going to list everything here. I just want to give you an idea of what type of information to put in here. How many people are writing an app that has multiple actors? Like there'll be different types of people using the app in addition to the end user. Okay, so that's one. No one else. Okay, so this app also has multiple actors, and that's why it is important to document for each actor, for each classification of users, why is this app useful or important to those people. Okay. And I'm gonna click save here. The next thing is you look at this and you go, wow, but there are certain things that may not be very helpful, or I want to hide or do not want to display, such as this part here, comments from somebody else, and also this link to allow people to add files to this page, basically turning it into just like a folder where people can download stuff. You can change all of this stuff here by going to more, and then you go to page settings, which is specific to this page. I can turn off allow attachments, turn off allow comments, and I can also potentially give it a page description, and I can then click save, and now you can see that the bottom part is now gone. Okay, so pretty quick, pretty easy to start your planning stage. Are there any questions about operating Google Sites, at least to this point here? Okay, no questions. Okay, now that I have identified what why this app is useful to somebody, what is the next part? This is a pretty high level description. So the lower level description, the next level down is what kind of description? How it works?
Yeah.
Or what type of action a particular actor may want to do. Okay, so that would be the other part of this document. You can put it into the same document, or you can also start a new document. Since this document is relatively short, we'll go ahead and just continue with this one here. So the next H2 is going to say actions for users. Okay, so once again I have two different types of actors, so we'll go ahead and describe the actions for each type of user. So we'll have consumers on one hand, and then have service providers on the other hand. Okay, so remember the context here. I'm dealing with biodiesel consumers. Basically people who are driving certain types of vehicles that can take biodiesel as a fuel. So what do you think would be something that those people might need to do, actions that those people need to do with this app? It's a prepaid account. Okay, so in other words, these people have to prepay for their biodiesel before they consume or pump biodiesel. Okay, they have to be
prepaid.
okay. Well, so those are use cases now, right? Okay, so for consumers, the use cases, I can use a bulleted list here just to make it more clear. Okay, so there are several things, so we can say, one is to prepay or add funds to account is one. Okay, exactly how it is done, we don't care at this point. Okay, is it going to be done by PayPal, credit card, wallet, or just pay by check. We don't know. Okay, we don't care at this point. We just know that there has to be a way for a consumer to prepay or add funds to the prepaid account through this app. What else do you think might be useful for this app? Now, logging in is an important step, but its purpose is for authentication and also to make sure the application is secure. But by itself, it's not serving a particular value. Okay, so it's not quote unquote an action that is inherent to the application itself. But prepaying is.
Balance inquiry? Balance inquiry?
Balance. Okay, so you want to check the balance, right? Okay. Check balance. Okay, that's definitely something that you might want to do, especially when you have a prepay account. So you want to check, okay, do I have to prepay or add more funds? Because I have a long trip coming up. I need to make sure that the funds is transferred in time so that I can go to the next place and pump biodiesel. That brings up to the next use case, doesn't it? This is not Chevron. This is not something that you can find all throughout town. There are only so many locations that are a part of the biodiesel co-op. So maybe another one is to find a location. Okay. Find co-op pump stations. Okay. Anything else? Well, I think we have handled everything that is important except for the most important one. What happens when someone who wants to pump biodiesel walks up or drives up to the biodiesel pump? Well, you take the dispenser out and then you start pumping, right? So the app should be able to connect to a Bluetooth enabled flow meter. So that way, it will basically serve as the terminal or the display of the pump. Okay. Pump biodiesel. And when we pump biodiesel, there are several things listed here, so we can have a little sub list. One is to display amount pumped. And the second one, just imagine, when you walk up or when you pump gasoline, what are the things that you might want to specify? How do you can top it off, right? I mean, you can top it off if you have enough money left in the account, or you might want to specify, I just want to pump a certain amount of fuel or a certain amount of money. Yep.
Alert to low funds.
Alert to low funds, okay. So that would not be in pump, but it would be another option here, okay? Low fund alert, okay?
I would think it would be, you can associate to pump, because while you're pumping, it could alert you while you're pumping.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we'll move that.
Otherwise, you're just checking your balance.
Right. Well, it depends on whether an account can be shared by multiple people, because if somebody else, let's say you have one single account and there are 3 vehicles, they're all company vehicles. So you are the person who is capable of paying. The other 2 people are the ones who will basically just be using the fuel. So when they're pumping, they can still be your funds can get low without you actually doing anything. So maybe it will still be able to generate that event, but we'll just put it here for the time being. All right. Okay. How about a service provider? In other words, you volunteer your site. Maybe you run a restaurant or some other site, but you volunteer to be a location for the co-op so that people can pump biodiesel at your site. Okay. So what do you think, from your perspective, is important? Now, let me just describe, the business side of this co-op here. When a tank is low, so let's say the tank of my location is low, I'm the one responsible to call up somebody, a tanker, to refill that tank. At the same time, I'm also responsible to pay for all that refueling. Okay, so what do you think might be important to me in this case? as a site operator.
To know what your fuel reserves are.
Okay, so that would be a, so we have a low fuel level alert. Okay, in other words, I want this app to be able to alert me and say, we are running down to 10% of the tank capacity. It's time, to order, more fuel. Okay, that's definitely a good use of this app here.
Profits. Profits.
Profits? Well, since it's a non-profit co-op, there's no such thing as profit, unfortunately.
Profit.
Well, the profit in this case is, because you're operating in this hypothetical situation, because I'm running a restaurant, so it has, kind of like a two-sided thing. One is people who want to use biodiesel, they can come to my restaurant. If they have to pick, different restaurants for that particular evening, since my restaurant can also pump biodiesel, which they may need to do anyway, so they might select my restaurant, they might prefer my restaurant to other restaurants just because they can also pump biodiesel without having to drive somewhere else. And then the other thing has to do with maybe I have a lot of vegetable oil after I deep fried tempura or whatever, and the biodiesel trucks can also come pick up that oil for me because they need to refine that to become actual biodiesel. So that's kind of like the quote unquote profitable part, but it's intangible. It's not like in dollar amounts.
Yeah.
But in another type of settings, yes, you can also kind of track. This is my cost, and this is how much they're paying, and this is the
You would want to
the
keep track
profit.
of that anyway, make sure you're not losing money.
Yep. So maybe you want to check the balance,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So basically, you want to check the balance, but in this case, the balance is kind of specific because it's specific to your particular site. Okay. So you want to say this is specific to a particular site. Okay. To own site, because you're operating it, so you don't really care how much biodiesel is pumped at another site, but you want to know how much biodiesel is pumped from your site, outgoing. You want to be able to list who used your site, right? Okay, so you want to list pump log. Okay. Display pump events. Okay, I'll just make it even more general, because it's just events. Okay, who signed in and then pumped how many gallons, who signed in and pumped how many gallons. Okay, and also money transferred. Okay, because as people pump, the app on the other side should have transferred the money at the same time. So I want to keep a log and check that log as well. Okay. And then I also have to keep track of cost to refill tank, because I want to keep track of all of that stuff. Okay. So are there any questions about this part here? It's a little bit more specific than the first one, but it is all coming from the other section. Okay, the previous section is more vague, but it does describe, overall speaking, what people want to do with this particular application. And this one is a lot more specific. Any other questions or comments about this particular document? No? Okay. All right. So let's just say that this is all that I need to do, at least for the time being. Okay, so my app has two types of users. We have consumers and service providers. And by the way, a particular user can be both a consumer and a service provider. So being the restaurant owner, who is donating a space for the tank and stuff like that, I might drive a vehicle that is also running on biodiesel, and I'm no special, right? Because I cannot just walk up to my own tank and say, oh, I'm gonna get biodiesel for free. So I have to be log in as a consumer as well as log in as a service provider, or I can have two rows from one single login. Okay. What do you think will be the next stage? now that I have kind of pinpointed, the individual things that I have to do.
Start designing.
Okay, we can start designing. When you're designing, you need more details, right? Because when you're designing the screen for prepaying or adding funds to your prepay account, you kind of need to know more details, because you need to know, do we have to deal with what kind of payment account or payment method is available? Is there an option even? If you want to check balance, do you want to be able to display a log of events? In other words, instead of just displaying the current balance, do you want to be able to show deposits and withdrawals, like a log? Okay, so there will be more details. Okay, so if you want to specify more details, then you can go ahead and either change this document, which I think is okay, because this can be a rather long document. So we'll go ahead and say, okay, more details of each action. Okay, so we'll start with prepay here. So we'll say insert, subheading, and we'll just say prepay. All right, so in the prepay screen, you need to kind of think about, okay, I'm adding more funds to my prepay account. What do I need to specify on the screen? And what are the options that are available? Any type of check boxes that may be useful here, and so on and so forth. Okay, but why am I using a HTML document and text to do all of this stuff instead of diving into App Inventor and or other types of application and start designing the screens right away? Why do you think I want to use this kind of really primitive way? I could have done this on a napkin. Yep.
You think out all the stuff you're going to be adding beforehand to make
that's
it consistent.
It's actually easier to edit here. Okay, it is actually easier to edit when you're dealing with a text document compared to editing when you're in App Inventor. Even though App Inventor is really intuitive. Okay, so just let me go ahead and go to my project, start a new one, and we'll just call this SAC file. So even though this is a really intuitive interface, after a while, if you want to make a lot of changes to the screen layout, it's still a hassle. Okay, it's still more of a hassle compared to just doing entries or editing entries in the text or HTML document. So I would defer actually doing something to App Inventor as late as possible. Okay. And besides, the document that I have at this point, is it specific to Android or App Inventor as a integrated development environment? No, it's not. I mean, this is really generic. It is not specific to a particular device or operating system or even a GUI. I mean, this can all be done without a GUI. Okay. So in prepay, I'm just going to do one or two of these examples, but in real details, in other words, I want to have enough details at this point to start the next stage, which is actually designing the screens. Okay, so I need to have enough details for that purpose. Okay, so I'm going to specify here more details for each action, enough to start screen design. So that's the purpose of this particular section, is to specify enough details, so that I can start with actual design of the screen. Okay, for prepaying, what kind of stuff do I need to specify on that screen, or what type of elements do you think I should have on that particular screen? Well, the first one is easily amount. Okay. Now, since we are in the United States and this is a really kind of big country, we don't have to deal with anything that Europeans have to deal with. Okay, there's no change of currency. There's only one currency, in this country. So I don't have to be able to specify the unit of amount. I don't have to deal with euro or pounds and stuff like that. Yep.
Is this allocated amount or total amount?
This is how much you are adding to. Oh, okay, that's a good question. Amount to add to. Okay, this is the amount to add to your account. Okay, so you might want to display the current balance. Okay. What else? What else do you think would be useful for this particular screen when you're prepaying? Now, depending on the application, maybe I might have methods. Okay, alternative methods of payment. In other words, I can pay by maybe PayPal, Dwala, credit cards, and so on. Okay, now that part is something that is specific to the co-op, how they want to set up everything. But I might need to leave an option over there so that I can support all of these different options. Okay. Any other thing I should add to the prepay screen? Let's say there's nothing else I have to. Yep, go ahead.
Cancel transaction.
Cancel transaction. So to back out to the previous screen. Okay. And that usually can be done by the back button. Most people just hit the back button when they want to go back, a particular screen. Okay. All right. Now, but I'm not done yet because now I also have to think about all the things that can go wrong in this process. Okay, so after someone clicks the submit button, submit payment button, what do you think can happen? So I have to think about responses, right? Potentially things that can be come back as a response. Okay, the first response is everything is okay. Okay, payment goes through without problem. Okay. The second one, would be there are problems. Okay, so there are problems with payment. At this point, I'm not going to specify too much detail because depending on which method I'm using for the payment, I might get a different type of response back. So I'm not too worried, to have to specify all the different problems that can come back, with this payment screen. All right. Are there any questions at this point? No questions? So at this point, I am, fairly sure, what I can do, with that screen, and I can go back to App Inventor at this point and not use screen 1. Okay, screen 1 is very special because screen 1 is always the first screen that starts up an application. So you don't want to do anything to screen 1, unless you absolutely have to, or unless you are really sure that this is the first screen that the user will see. So that's why when you want to design a screen for a particular purpose of your application, it's always helpful just to add a new screen to serve that particular purpose. So I would say this is screen for payment, and then I'll just do everything that is related to payment in this particular screen. When you design the screen, the first thing you want to do is to change the title, because the name of the screen cannot contain spaces and punctuations inside, but the title you can change it to anything you want to. So in this case, you can say just payment. There's no need to mention screen itself. Just payment is fine. And now I can go back to the document and actually take out all these items here. But then I have a different issue here. Okay, when I'm just documenting here, about the detail of each action. In other words, what do I need to specify or include in that screen? The ordering is not important. All I really care is to have all the important stuff already listed, but the order is not important. When you're actually designing the screen, the placement and the order of these items now become important, because it doesn't make any sense, to have a text box to allow someone to specify the amount, and then you tell that person how much is remaining in the account. That just doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So we have to change this a little bit here. Display the current balance first, and then specify, use a text box to specify the new amount, and then we specify, have a list picker to specify, what is the method of payment, and a button to say, submit. Okay, I'm ready to actually pay, add funds to my prepay account. Is that making any sense? So just to go through this one single example, I'm going to go back here. What should I do? I want to display the current balance, and then I want to have a text box to specify, to let people specify the new amount. Okay, how much do you want to add to this balance? And then we have a list box, which can also serve as the submit button, of different payment methods. So what am I going to do here? I mean, how should I lay out the screen?
Horizontal arrangement.
You can use horizontal. You can also use a table. Now the nice thing about a table is you can have one column as the label. So the first item is current balance, and then you specify the amount as another label, and then the second row can start with amount to add, and then you have a text box to specify the amount that you're adding, and then on the third row or outside of the table arrangement, you can have a list box so that people can select which way to what method to use for the prepayment. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and I'll just kind of go ahead and display a little bit here. We have a table arrangement. Drag it into here. With table arrangement, you can specify the number of columns and rows. You can also change that later on if you want to. Visibility, showing or hiding. Width, you can always specify field parents, which means it's going to be as wide as the parent screen itself. And in this case, we have 2 items on each row, basically 2 columns. So I will go back to basic and drag 2 labels over here as the caption of that particular item. So we have label and label. The first one is going to be my current balance. So I'm going to change the text to current balance. The second one is going to correspond to how much money I'm adding in this case. So I'm going to specify amount to add. And then over here, I'm going to have another label to represent the amount of the current balance. So now we'll go to label again and put it here as the second item of the first row. Now the actual amount, obviously is not, I cannot actually know the current balance at this point, so I can just, basically put a 0 here just as a placeholder. And then amount to add is going to be a text box, because this is how people can actually enter something. So we can go specify a text box and put it here. And then within the text box, we can also specify certain things. So we can specify the hint of text box 1, which does not show in App Inventor, but it will show up, when you run the application. So you can specify. We can say specify amount to add in dollars, and it definitely is not multi-line, but it is numbers only. Okay. The default text is, we can just put a 0 here. Text alignment is left, which is okay. It aligns to the left. It's okay in this case. And here we have, a really simple design, for the first portion. And then the second portion, I want to use a list box, so that list picker, I should say, list picker to select the payment method. So in here, we'll go ahead and specify the name for the list picker. Okay. So we just say payment method here. And that's good enough for the design of this particular screen. So are there any questions about this process? Okay, we start with a very vague description of why someone might want to download and install your application. And remember, being able to log in is not a reason, because that by itself does not serve any purpose. Okay, it is a necessary step to make sure that nobody else can use your prepaid account, to dispense biodiesel. So it does serve a purpose like that, but it's not core to the application itself. And then we make it more clear as to, okay, now that we know why would someone want to install your application, then we start to enumerate the actual actions that those people might want to do with your application, and then from there we try to specify as much detail as possible before we get to the actual design of the screen, and then we design the screen.
Question.
Yep.
What would be the example of a site that no one would want?
A site?
Yes,
You mean an app?
If it's just a game, something frivolous, probably somebody who might want to use it. So there would be every site would be used to somebody, right? What kind of site would be used to nobody?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Just because the developer thinks it is useful doesn't mean it's going to be useful to somebody else.
What would be the example of one that no one would want to look at? I mean, you can live without playing a game, something like that, okay?
Mhm.
Just an information screen. But what would be one that no one would want?
Maybe it doesn't do whatever it's supposed to do well enough, or it's. Let me think about your question.
You could say the purpose of the screen is to provide a time killer. You could do that. But even that is useful to somebody, right?
But if you don't keep that in mind as you're writing the app, it is easy for a developer to start to drift, and the app morphs into something else, or something that is not the original intent of the application.
Especially if it's done in like a team that's not cohesive.
Especially when it's not a local team.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of cases like that. I think there are a lot of people who take their app development to Southern California or some other states. Well, I shouldn't say some other states, because Southern California is still in the state of California as it is now. There are a lot of people saying that it should not. We should split the state into two halves. And there are even other interesting ways to split the state. But anyway, but yes, feature creep is a very important thing. It happens a lot. Okay, you originally design an app for something, and then as you continue to write the app, to the developer, it is still making sense. But the app doesn't make sense to the user anymore. To the user, it's like, why do we have this feature here? And why don't we have a feature like that here? Because the developer has lost track of the original purpose of the application. Like Windows. The Windows is supposed to be an operating system, which means it is supposed to be hidden. It is not in the way. It is supposed to be like completely invisible, right? But yet it is not. It becomes an obstacle instead. So did I answer your question? I mean,
It doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
Just say supposed to give supposed to say, why would anybody use your app? And I was thinking, what would be an app that nobody would want to use?
Okay, but you cannot write an app that can do everything well. Okay, now I can tell you something that a feature creep of this particular app that can potentially happen. Okay, so somebody may say, well, since we're keeping track of biodiesel, I want this app to also keep track of mileage. Okay, so every time you gas up, you would enter the reading of your odometer, which doesn't seem like a bad idea. I mean, you're just punching in something. You're already in your car, in your vehicle. You're just saying, oh, okay, my odometer reading is da 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 da. Okay, So it doesn't sound like a bad idea, and so you just say, okay, we'll add that feature, no problem. What if you have multiple vehicles? Then the odometer reading is no longer specific to a particular vehicle. So now people say, oh, okay, well, in order to do this, I have to be able to keep track of my different vehicles. Okay, I'm driving my VW today, I'm driving my Mercedes the next day. They're both biodiesel, vehicles. So, so now you have to enter all that information, right? And then somebody else would say, oh, okay, I want this app to show me, the actual gas or diesel mileage, in terms of miles per gallon, as I refuel, so I can say, okay, I changed my driving style or I changed my route, and therefore my gas mileage is changed. I want to see how it is impacting my gas mileage. Okay? And that's really kind of drifting away from what the app was originally designed for. Now, I'm not saying that the other features are useless. I mean, they're definitely useful. But at some point, where do you stop? That's the question, right? Where do you draw that line in sand and say, okay, we have to stop this, feature creep, because that's not what this app was originally designed for. Am I, making the point? No.
No, I think that's an intellectual challenge, right? A site that absolutely nobody wants.
I do that all the time. Like in this class, I write examples, right? I mean, the example apps are useless to anyone who's downloading the app and go like, what? Why do I want to use this app? It's only useful to people like yourself because I want to show you how to make use of, say, list pairs, right? Okay, so I write a very simple app to illustrate that idea, but the app serves absolutely no value to someone who's just running it. Is that okay?
It's a value to you.
It's a value to you instead because you're learning how to use list pairs, but looking at the source code. When you're running the app, it doesn't serve any purposes. Yep. But to continue with that feature creep, the next thing people want is, I want to install a OBD2 to Bluetooth dongle in a car, so now I can monitor the car all the time. So the miles per gallon display is no longer per refuel. Okay, it is real time. And then from there, people say, oh, but OBD2 actually has all kinds of other information. Now I want to know my coolant temperature. I want to know, all the other, operate parameters of my engine speed and whatnot. I want to find out, where is the peak optimal, efficiency. Is it when I'm in third gear or fourth gear? How fast am I going? It will just keep going on and on and on, and it's no longer an app just to, for refueling.
Well, eventually, you add too many features to an app, it becomes another issue. You should just make it new.
Clouded.
Exactly. But feature creep is bad because, people who are running your app, would basically just be overwhelmed by all of these other things that do not really matter when they just want to pump fuel. And so my personal feel is you should keep an app as simple as possible, so that people can just use it and not have to deal with a lot of options, 2 gazillion options that you can configure. Like the newer versions of Android has a gazillion features that you can configure. All right. Okay, so this is an entire process, to get this to work, and we are running out of time here, so I'm gonna try this one more time and see if I can get it to work. Oops. Rerun that. Yep, KVM is running this time, and the app should start a lot faster, so I can. There we go. I think that's a lot faster than last time.
Ted,
Yep.
show us, I don't know, I forgot what you said you were going to be doing on Windows. Can you show us how to, on AI too, how to get the emulator working?
Oh, sure.
So I've seen you do it on Linux, but I don't know anything about Linux.
That's not a bad idea. That's actually why I'm doing this, is to illustrate how to get everything that I did in Linux, but in Windows. In Windows XP, no less. Alright, so here's Windows XP, and it's complaining about certain things. That's okay. Alrighty.
Oh, this is much faster.
Start the browser. Well, as long as I have network access, I'm still good. So the question is, do I have network access? Okay, so we'll go to the original App Inventor first. Okay, so we'll go to appinventor.mit.edu, and my network card is not recognized. Fine. The emulator is no longer using the same default network card, and that's why it just didn't pick it up the first time.
Is the network card exposed to the emulator?
No, there's an emulated network card in the emulator, and they changed the one that is used by default. So now I have to figure out what is.
Need a new driver for it? Need a new driver for it?
Yeah, it doesn't have driver for the default one. That's the problem. Just gonna put it down like that. Okay, so I have to say model equals something, and the available models, I think the RTL 8139 is the one that is always supported, so we'll go for that one. RTL 8139. RTL 8139. Okay, so it doesn't complain this time about networking, so I think it should be good. Alright. Go to appinventor.mit.edu. Yay. So I think we have to go to Explore, go to Setup first. Because I haven't really done this on this particular virtual machine. This is the first time, so I have to install App Inventor software first. Instruction for Windows, download, and then install it. In other words, we can still use this from the first App Inventor. It's not a problem. We can run the virtual machine from the first App Inventor and make it work with App Inventor 2, because we can just go through command line commands to make it work. Okay, so go ahead and install this. And the default location in this case, because I'm running Windows XP as an administrator, so it is installing it to program files, App Inventor / commands for App Inventor. Okay, so your location may be different, because if you installed it like in this lab here, you're a end user who cannot install software to the entire system, so it'll be installed under your own account when you're running it in this classroom. So this part can be different depending on how you're running this installation software. Okay.
And if you're running with a link.
Say again?
I said, and if you're running with a link.
And where would that be installed if you're running Windows 8?
That should be running on your home computer.
Uh-huh.
Windows 8, or so you have a laptop with Windows 8.
Uh-huh.
Don't install it on the C drive.
Just don't install it on the C drive.
The Windows 8 doesn't want to expose the C drive to
Uh-huh.
some non-signed Microsoft app. Yeah. So if it's something that's not approved by Microsoft,
I smell trusted computing.
because I tried and I couldn't get the ADB to start.
Okay, it's new. Is it new block or new blocks? I think it's just new block dot
New blocks.
new blocks dot app inventor dot mit.edu. And I'm going to log in here as my other account. Wow. Okay, continue. All right. So now I have App Inventor 2 running here, but I have App Inventor 1 software installed. So now the question is, how do I get everything running? I mean, how do I get the emulator to work, and also how do I upload programs to my emulator so I can debug the programs? All right, first thing first, start up a command line prompt. So we say run cmd. And this part also depends on the operating system. I think this is XP, which is really easy. In Windows 7, I think there's a text box by default, where when you press the start button, you can just so you can start typing right away.
Yeah, you can. It's a search function.
And then in Windows 8, how do you do that? How do you start the text
Right.
box?
You can hit the window key, type in CMD, and then hit enter.
Oh, okay. All right. So press the Windows key and then just start typing.
And then
Okay.
it should pop up.
That's in 7.
Okay.
That's an 8.
Both of them will
If
do
you
it.
press the Windows key at 8, it pulls up the start screen.
Yeah, but if you
Just
start
Windows
typing,
key R.
CMD.
Bring up the run
Windows 8
dialog
and Windows
box.
7 both
Ah,
do.
okay. And I press the Windows key. This is what I get. That's XP.
Try Windows key and R. Together.
Windows key and
R.
R. Okay, so for running.
That's the
There you go.
default run.
Okay. Sorry, I don't use Windows. All right. So in this case, you have to go to the path where it was installed, and that part depends on where it is actually located. In this case, it is located in the C drive, your program files, and then within program files, it is installed in App Inventor, and within Inventor, it is in commands.app inventor. So this is the full path to where the commands are installed. The first thing I want to do is to start the emulator, and okay, fine, my Linux command.
I do
thing
that all
is-
the time. I made a bat file that just masks it as a dir.
You can also install Cygwin, Cygwin. So it basically install all the Linux commands on the Windows box. It's actually pretty nifty.
You get ADW too, right?
It
Hmm?
would be the other way around.
Say again?
ADW. Same thing.
Yeah.
It emulates
Yep.
the commands.
So I'm gonna start the emulator with this batch file, and I'm not sure whether I allocated enough RAM to the virtual machine because I'm starting a virtual machine inside the virtual machine at this point, so it might run out of RAM. I'm hoping that it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be very slow for sure.
Copied.
Hmm?
This one file copied. What's in the run bat file?
Yeah,
It didn't do
it started it.
it. Here, this is the way it works.
Yep, see, it's
Yeah.
starting it. So I have an emulator running inside an emulator at this point. The more reason to ask the department to get me a faster and more powerful machine. What are you doing, Tag? I'm running an emulator inside an emulator.
Wonder how far you can chain it.
Until you run out of resources, basically.
Yeah, I got 16 gigs of RAM on mine, so.
Well, the QEMU can only allocate up to 2 gigs of RAM to a virtual machine when you run it in 32-bit. but if you run it in 64-bit, I think you can allocate more. Okay, so we are good. We are good for now. Okay, so we want to run ADB devices just to see whether the device is recognized. So we'll go ahead and check it. All right, it is offline. Okay, it is attached now. It is online. All right, so we have just confirmed that the emulator is working. ADB can talk to it, and almost everything is good now. Okay. So now we go to App Inventor and say package for phone, download to this computer. And it really, yeah, go ahead.
It said device. I thought it would say online.
I think it only says device. Not sure. Oh, error occurred. Check the debugging messages, which is not there, right? I mean, I'm gonna pick something else.
Looks like it was there, but then it just disappeared.
Yeah, I'll just do something else.
Was that the one that you tried to do in multiple browsers?
Yeah. I'm gonna try this one out. Same thing, package, download to this computer. Pretty sure it has nothing to do with running inside an emulator.
I wouldn't see an issue.
Sorry?
I would not see an issue.
Yeah.
That's all it really is just downloading from the website.
Yep. From that side, from their side, they would not care. Yep, this is all getting recorded, so that's good. I'm gonna upload this later on. Okay, so we saved the file. Okay, now because I did not set up Firefox to ask me where to download the file every single time, it's downloaded by default to my downloads folder of the username that I log in as. Okay, so that means when I go back to the command line, I have to say ADB and then install. -R is useful especially if you have that application already installed on your virtual device. Then the -R means it's okay to reinstall. Okay, but that's what the -R is for. And now I have to specify the entire path, and this is in Windows XP.
Can you just use
Just use Explorer, find it, and copy and paste.
percent profile percent or something like that?
Percent, is it user?
I don't possibly.
No. Yeah, I can use Explorer to find out where it's installed. Let's go to my computer. Because I need to know the full path. It's going to be in
Documents and settings.
and then under my name. I just want to confirm it here first before I try to locate it in the command line.
I think it's in my documents.
Downloads. And
There it is. Try pressing Shift and right click on it.
shift right click.
You get the full path name right away.
Yep.
Okay, so the
Let's
feature's
just
not
select-
available in XP.
Nope, cannot paste it like this.
You have to
Cannot
right
paste
click
it like
and paste.
that. That won't work because unless I put quotes in it, because the path has spaces inside, so they have to be escaped using double quotes.
It would also depend on the program itself, because the program could potentially see it as a full path.
And it's called form data.wk. It's getting the file, it's just
Yep.
uploading very slowly.
0 bytes and thousands of seconds. 1 million.
1 million and something seconds. But yet it says 272 kilobytes per second. Success! Alright, so now we can go back to the emulator. This one. And this should be installed already. Click here. we have
Yep, right there. A little further.
form data. There we go. And that shows you the whole process. To do the basic stuff, okay, this does not include the APK tool thing that we talked about last time. So
Can you
I can.
show that in Windows?
Sorry.
Can you show that process in Windows?
Control.
The AP, fixing the screen resolution within Windows.
Right. So that part, is not, I'm not demonstrating it today because that's going to take a while too. But at least, this will get you guys up and running, combining the emulator from the first App Inventor but use it in App Inventor 2 if you choose to use App Inventor 2. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, question.
Yep.
So this is a difficulty we all have to go through to get the emulator to run in App Inventor 2? We all have to do this?
It's not difficult. I mean, it's just a few steps.
If you wish to use emulator,
Weak to me. Okay.
Well, you're developing software. I mean, so this process, really should not bother you that much.
Well, you resorted, didn't you, to a Linux instruction there?
No, it's DOS. It's command line based. Okay, on this side here, it is command line based.
ADB install -R.
Yeah.
That's all Windows?
That's all Windows.
Yeah, it's all
No, ADB is specific to the Android development platform. But the DOS, this is a DOS box. I mean, well, we call it a DOS box. It's just it's a command line interface. It exists, in all versions of Windows since day one because it predates Windows. It's not uncommon for developers to have to go through these process to get something to work. I mean, that's really just the way it is.
But if I didn't know this, I couldn't have gotten it to work.
Sorry?
If I didn't know this, if you hadn't demonstrated this right here, I would not have gotten it to work.
Well, that's why I demonstrated it today.
It's good that he asked.
No, I was planning to do it anyway. That's why I started the virtual machine today, the emulator. I tried it a few days. I tried it a few classes before, but because my virtual machine itself was messed up, I could not do it. But now that it's done, it's all getting recorded too.
Another question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a cell phone or a smartphone. How do one search for an app?
How do you search for an
How
app?
do you search for what's available? The millions of apps that are out there.
through
Okay.
the Google Play Store or App
Can you search for
Market.
with Google? Can Google search for it?
You can go to the Play Store. So you just go to Google Play Store. Just search for that, and you can go to it using your regular browser.
I mean, can you search for it if you had a smartphone in hand?
Can you look for it with a
Can you
smartphone?
find out what apps are available in the world? If you have
Yeah.
a smartphone?
Yeah, you just go to the Play Store app on the phone, and it gives you a really nice interface to search for apps and display what is
Okay.
available.
All right.
Yeah. And you can now get a
Okay, all right.
get a tablet for less than $100. Okay, I just want to show you this guy. This as the last thing. I saw this last night and I decided, hey, this is not bad. It's good. It's in community deals, community source deals. This is a Asus 32 gigabyte tablet, 10-inch tablet for $180, which is actually quite expensive. But I saw one that is like insanely cheap. Okay, here's another one. This one was not up last night when I checked. It's another Asus, and this is a Memo Pad, 7-inch, and it's for $90. There was another one that was even cheaper. Yep, go ahead.
You gotta watch out for the cheap ones because they may not be licensed to use the Google stuff.
To do play. Asus probably is. I mean,
Yeah,
if it's,
but those unlicensed ones or whatever have unlocked versions of Android, so you just hack the Play Store onto it.
Yeah, that's what I did with my Kindle Fire HD.
there was another one that's even cheaper. I cannot remember where it was. It's definitely an off-brand, but it was cheap. It was inexpensive. But I decided not to get it because I already have too many Android. Oh, right there. There you go. Okay.
How many tablets do you have at home?
Too many.
Never.
The question is how many too many, right? I mean,
Yeah, I've got like 5.
Okay, there you go. $35 for a Kobe. Yep.
No,
Are you familiar with CyanogenMod?
Say again?
Are you familiar with CyanogenMod?
Mm-mm.
Oh, they're just like a custom Android ROM that like they kind of supports it. You actually have a
Oh,
device
right.
that-
CyanogenMod. Yeah. That's actually on all of my Android devices.
Oh, yeah.
Before I buy anything, I check to make sure there's a CyanogenMod ROM for it.
So it's good. And there's a way to version supported.
Yep, and make sure there's a way to root it too. Yep, exactly. So this is an Android tablet, 4 gigabytes, 7-inch with Android 4.0. Okay, so it's not bad.
That's pretty good. $34.
But with
Yep.
the system space being used of the 4 gigabyte, you're going to end up with very little space left.
Well, the downside is, that's one potential thing to consider. But the downside is it has a resistive touch screen, not a capacitive one. So multi-touch is out of the question. There's no multi-touch capability on this particular device, and it's not as responsive. It's really sometimes you have to press kind of harder to get it to register. But for $35, I'm not going to complain too much. Especially if it's really just for a class like this.
Or if you're doing like a home automation system for $34, I can turn around and sell that for $150 a piece to a homeowner doing home automation.
Yep. Now this one doesn't have Bluetooth, so if you need Bluetooth for home automation, then it's out of your question. But it does have Wi-Fi. It says it has Wi-Fi.
If it has USB, yeah, you could potentially add a USB USB Bluetooth module.
Yeah.
Yep. And it has an 800 by 480 resolution, which is okay. I mean, it's not like super duper high resolution, but for people like me, that's actually pretty much all that I can handle with a 7-inch device. And here's more detail. So it doesn't say whether it has Google Play Store installed. It has Calendar, but that may not be the Google Calendar either. So I'm not really 100% sure whether this is, it has licensed software. Maybe I can just look for that too. Looks like some people have done this search already.
Yeah, how to
install Google Play on. Yep, there you go. And it's right on YouTube.
Yeah, you're gonna have to add all the frameworks and all the backbone APKs.
Yeah, but that's okay because if you get CyanogenMod, you have to do that anyway. G apps, you have to download the G apps zip and then reflash the ROM.
It seems like like a unlock bootloader.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Go ahead.
Is there any adverse, effects does it break the license, I guess, if we install aftermarket on devices that aren't approved? Or is it illegal or is it copyrighted?
It was gray before, but I think Google basically gave in and said it's okay. When in the earlier stages of CyanogenMod, they ran into exactly that problem because they could not bundle Google apps with the CyanogenMod ROM, so they have to separate those things to gapps .zip, so you have to reinstall that as a separate process. And I think Google was originally giving them some grief, and saying, oh, you're not supposed to do this. And then later on, CyanogenMod actually cleared that with Google, and it's okay to do it. Because I think Google, from their perspective, there's nothing to lose. I mean, people want to install your apps, and you're collecting all that information and about people's habit and whatnot through these apps. Why would you not let people install those apps?
And plus, when they buy stuff from the market, they're getting a cut of the profit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Google has no reason to say you cannot install those apps. I mean, because they.
But as a
Huh?
Because if you're installing CyanogenMod, you have a rooted phone. And you get a rooted phone, then it's much easier
I don't know whether DRM applies in this case though.
Well, I mean, like, things like for like content, like the movies or the
Right, for content, absolutely. Yep. Yep. So right now it says find a link. You have to sideload the APK for market and vending. Okay. And there's more detail here. So I'm pretty sure it can be done. I mean, it's there's another video showing how to do it too. I mean, this is a full video just to show how to do it. So that's a $35, 7-inch tablet. I wouldn't call it a high-end or a good tablet, but for purposes of just testing it out for a class like this, it's not a bad option. It has got Wi-Fi, which means you don't have to go through all that trouble to start up an emulator, right? With Wi-Fi, you can just use the companion and use the Wi-Fi portion to hook up to it.
This tablet costs $30.
Oh, okay.
And it's crappy for like actual user use, but
Uh-huh.
for debugging apps and stuff, it looks great because it's readable, it's very easy to activate the debug option,
Uh-huh.
and it's $30, so if it breaks, it doesn't really matter.
And which brand make and model?
Amazon, it's just an Ematix Prime or whatever.
Ematix.
Yeah, EMATICS.
Okay. Let's look that up. So more resources. Ematix tablet. Okay, there we go. Yep. All right.
I mean, it's not like super awesome or anything, but
Hey, if it works.
It's better than Kobe. I know you're bad.
Does it have a capacitive screen or a resistive screen?
multi-touch.
It's multi-touch, so it's capacitive.
Capacitive.
So there you go. I mean, but you got it for
The price
$30.
may have gone up too. It looks like it has. But
Yeah.
I got it for $30. I got it.
Yeah, but it's still less than a textbook
Yeah,
in
I
some
mean-
classes.
Yeah. I bought it because I didn't want to like my memo pad. I had carried it in my backpack and it broke.
Uh-huh.
Screen shattered. I'll like digitize your LCD. So it's like $250 to replace it. So I just spent $300 and bought a new one. Makes more sense that way to me.
All right. Well, so there you have it. Inexpensive Android devices. And that really gives you an idea of why app development is really lucrative. I mean, people can just buy these things, like notebooks, right? Like physical notebooks, not notebook computers. It becomes a commodity item. It's not really like a computer anymore. So, all right. Well, so I'm gonna conclude the screen recording for now. If you guys have any questions, I will be here to answer those questions. And I do want everybody to at least get started with